Hey, sisters and brothers, welcome to week 22 of Read Through the Bible in 2 years. If you recall, last week, the people of Israel in the Old Testament lesson have set off now, finally, from the foot of Mount Sinai, and they are on their way. They're on the march towards the promised land, that land that God had promised to their ancestors, to Abraham and to Sarah. Now, it is a trip that should have taken, probably weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, maybe. I mean, it's a lot of people to move. So it is 600,000 people. So it's a difficult trip, but it should have only taken weeks at most. But when they get close to the promised land, they lose their nerve. When they get close to the promised land, a significant portion of those people rebel against God, thinking that God will not help them or God was not powerful enough to help them take possession of this land that God has promised them. And so they rebel. In God's frustration and in God's anger, he stops them from entering into the promised land. He tells Moses that nobody in this congregation of people will enter into the promised land. No one that saw his works of power in Egypt, those 10 plagues, the crossing of the Red Sea as if it were dry land, the defeat of Pharaoh's army, none of them will enter into the promised land because they don't deserve it, or rather, they do not have the faith that it's going to take to make something great out of this promised land. And so God tells them that this whole generation must die. I think of this not as much as a punishment as a discipline. That what he is trying to do is he's trying to raise now a generation of people who have known nothing but the provision of God. That every morsel of food, that every crumb of bread, every morsel of meat, every drop of water, day after day after day, comes from God in manna in the morning and quail in the afternoon. And he wants a whole generation of people to know that it is God that provides for this, and that new generation will know nothing else but that. As they go into the promised land, then they will have enough faith to be able to follow God's commands, to be able to take possession of that promised land. The New Testament reading comes from the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians. And the readings for this upcoming week are readings about generosity and about stewardship. You see the people of Jerusalem, the Christians of Jerusalem, and not just the Christians, obviously, but all of the people in Jerusalem and Judea are suffering because of a great famine. And so Paul has encouraged his congregations, the congregations that are in Greece, the congregations that are in Rome and in Asia Minor, that those congregations be generous. And in fact, there's a group of congregations in the area called Macedonia that have been exceptionally generous, and they've given Paul money to take back to these Christians in Jerusalem and Judea so that they can be helped, so that they can buy food. And Paul is teaching them through this. He's teaching the Corinthians through these generous acts of the Macedonians, that they too are called to be generous, that they too are called to be good stewards of the gifts that God has given to us. So, folks, continue in your reading of Scripture, not only so that your knowledge of Scripture grow deeper, but also that your faith in this God who gives us Scripture will grow stronger as well. Thank you.